Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name's Will.
My name's Jonathan.
And we are Bad with Games. Oh man, this is our 0th podcast?
This is our 0th podcast of the show. We have not recorded any before now, and this doesn't count as one either. So we've recorded 0.
Right. So you can skip this one. You won't have skipped any.
Yes. If this is your first episode of the show, in this episode, we are going to lay out who we are, the premise of this podcast, and our history with video games. If you don't want to hear that and you don't care about who we are and you're just here to listen to us discuss video games themselves,
right?
You
can
can
figure that out from
right
context.
Now.
Okay.
You can just go right ahead to the first real episode, which will be available right now. But we're going to have a lot of fun in this episode, and we'll probably share some special secrets that only the true fans will know about if they listen.
That's right. Yeah, you can't call yourself a true fan if you don't listen to this one. Plus, you get just that little extra bit of the melodious sound of our voices.
You really do. Now, it's very awkward to record a first podcast. Nobody likes it. I don't like what we're doing right now. Do you feel good? I feel bad.
Yeah, not really. But that's why we're doing this 0th one. It can be bad. That's okay.
Yeah, and we have a built-in defense because the word bad is the first word of our show title.
That's true. You expect us not to be good at this.
That's the whole point. This is not our first podcast.
What?
Almost said this is not our first rodeo.
It's not that either.
No, I've been to a few rodeos in my day.
Mm-hmm.
So let's explain. Will and I just came off of a long-running, over 2 years long podcast adventure, a journey that we went on together, in which we discussed the book series Animorphs by K.A. Applegate. That show is called The Yerky Boys. It's still available online. If you'd like to, if you're a completionist like I am, you'll want to listen to all 300 hours of that show before starting this one.
Yeah, 100% you'll want to do that. You'll want to subscribe to that Patreon because we have even more content back there, even though it's not running anymore. You got to hear all of it or you're not a true fan, as we've said before. Also, if you like Animorphs or liked Animorphs, it is the best Animorphs podcast ever made. I think there's no question about that. I think that all those other ones suck shit.
Yeah.
And this is good. This is going to be true for video games as well. But I don't want to talk it up too much. The proof's in the pudding. You'll see once we're like 50 episodes in, you'll be like, Jesus Christ, how can anyone else compete? But at this particular moment,
the primary purpose of this show is really for us to promote our last show.
Right. You mean this episode or this entire show?
I think the entire show, because we didn't really there was no more Animorphs content to mine.
Right. We were done.
So we needed a new way to let people know about our old show. We thought, how can we Trojan horse people? We need to reach a wider audience and then trick them into going back to listen to about Animorphs.
It's a clever plan.
Well, so
I think it's going to pay off.
Conceit of that show was that Will,
yes,
was the Animorphs expert.
Yes, I was the buff. I had read it. I was a huge fan of it as a child. I'd read it multiple times as an adult. And Jonathan, you had barely read it as a child, if at all, and had not read it since.
Man, it was such a good show. We had such a good time.
Mm-hmm. Man, I hope this show's as good. If it's not, I'm fucking out of here.
We might just devolve into redoing it. If the show's not good, we're gonna have it's gonna turn slowly into a reread of Animorphs.
So that's smart. Because that could save it, I think.
Anyway, so for our second podcast endeavor together, we said we should flip the script. What's something where I am the one who has a lot of experience in a subject that you do not? And we went down the list. It was like women, no.
No way.
Sports, no.
Nope.
Being smart or good, no. Wait a minute.
Something Jonathan can actually do here.
Video games.
Holy
we landed
shit.
on video games. And that is the general premise of this show, is we are going to be walking through the history of video games, not necessarily strictly in chronological order, but many of the biggest, most important, influential video games, most of which I have played or am familiar with, some I'm not or haven't, but the vast majority of which you have never, maybe you've heard of them, but you've never laid finger on a button to play.
Yes. Almost nothing in the preliminary list have I laid finger to button for.
Yes, this is
although I've heard of most of them.
Yes, I mean, we can talk about the nitty-gritty of that list and what we're going to discuss and so on and so forth. But maybe before that, I thought this would be a good episode for people to get to know us, break the ice a little bit, and get down into the details of exactly what our history with video games is, or in your case, your history and your lack of history, because I do want to know about that. But maybe I don't know. Should I begin? Since I'm the buff now?
I mean, I actually do have a little bit of probing question as to the premise as well, because you said you were walking through the history of video games, and we're doing things that are somehow historically important. Now, I feel like it's important to clarify, or at least it seems to me from this list, that this isn't necessarily a very dry, like, historian's perspective. Like, we're not necessarily going to go through and be like, this is the first game to have this technical thing going on, but nobody ever played it, some weird computer thing in the 70s or whatever. That's not necessarily as important. It's more like the cultural history. And it's not necessarily going to be exactly chronological. It's going to be somewhat chronological in that we'll get older things first, it looks like. But it's not like, oh, we have to start with Pong and then we move to this and then that. And I think this is somewhat based on your exposure to them as well. But I'd be interested to hear you go into a little bit more depth as to, like, why is the layout chosen as it is, and, like, why is the order chosen as it is?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So the list that we have right now of the games that we, I suppose, theoretically intend to cover all of them.
Yeah.
Possibly. There are over 700 games.
There's no end to this. Here's the thing. The Animorphs podcast, we were going to end. This, there's no end to. We'll never stop playing video games unless we decide we hate it.
Yeah. We're trapped right now.
Yeah.
We're trapped. It's a trap of our own making. And the way I constructed this list initially was I simply sat down and wrote in, well, what are my favorite video games of all time? And then, extending that out to what are games that I think of as the most iconic, well-known games that everybody talks about. And then I went online and I actually referenced other lists of games from every platform, making sure I had a good variety of selection, a range of genres, companies, systems, dates, to make it more well-rounded. And that's how it ended up being over 700 games, which I do think this list is maybe the best, most comprehensive list of just the video games to know about and or play. I'm kind of proud of it. I think it's good.
Anyone has ever made, yeah.
There can't be, you could write more probably, but we pretty much have the most important ones, from arcade games to PC and beyond.
Your BuzzFeed's top 700 games of all time.
That's right. Yeah, I did not rank them. So yes, I would say the way that in terms of our organization of how we are going to cover them.
Mhm.
Initially, I didn't set out, I'm not thinking of this as a strictly, oh, we're a retro podcast, or, oh, we're going to talk only about old games and beyond. However, in constructing it, I am keeping in mind your perspective and anyone potentially who might listen to this, who might be in a similar boat to you, as unlikely as that may seem, it could happen. That I'm part of it is, well, I don't want you to play, like, obviously, if we're going to get to Mario 64, you got to play Mario Brothers first, right? Like, that's an
Obviously.
obvious one. Yes. But then also, I'm trying to think, and it's not going to be perfect for this system. There will be some gaps here and there, I'm sure. But I also don't want us to talk about, I don't know, GoldenEye if we haven't talked about Doom or Wolfenstein yet. So a lot of it is especially for the first chunk of games that we're covering, is I want to make sure we are laying the foundation in terms of genre, in terms
Okay.
of if we're going to be talking about fighting games at some point, it's important, I think, for us to have established the baseline of here's what Street Fighter is, here's what Mortal Kombat is, and we're not just diving into the deep end of stuff that came out just recently or something like that.
Right. So I have
Um,
context to
mhm.
discuss what I notice rather than just being like, "Oh yeah, this is one of those. I kind of know what those are."
Exactly. And I'm also looking through and making sure we're kind of we're separating the show into sort of seasons. We'll see how we call them that or how we contextualize them as we go on. But especially in the early days, I want to make sure we're sort of being well rounded so that, okay, we need platformers, RPGs, shooters. I don't want to just have one kind of game. I want to have a really good breadth and depth of
Hmm.
coverage on this show.
This is kind of
Um,
your curriculum as the professor.
right. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, honestly, like if I were going to teach a college course on video games, that is sort of how I'm approaching this.
Oh boy.
Anyway, so that I don't. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, I think that that answers my question. Just in terms of getting less me, honestly, because I can go look at the spreadsheet and be like, sure. But just getting the listeners kind of ready for like, why am I doing this? Did I just skip this time period? Am I never going back to it? Is there any sort of coherency? I think that that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, no, I think that as we get deeper into the podcast, we will more likely we may have bigger jumps where one week it's a game from 2005 and the next week it's the 80s and then it's
Hmm.
a 2010 game. There might be more like that, but certainly in the early episodes we're not going very far beyond the 90s. That's probably going to be most of our purview for like the first maybe year of this show.
Yes,
Which I know sounds a little scary to think about a year, but
I know, right? I swear we only had fucking 2 years on the other one, so that's half the other show. Um, was it
maybe it was
only
two and a
two? I
half
swear
years.
it was longer than two.
It
I
might have
don't
been
know.
2.5 years, something like that. Yeah. Anyway,
I don't know. But yeah, and I think it's also helpful to just kind of keep in mind that it feels like what you're really teaching me about is less like it's not again, this is not like a technical history. This is like what is the context and history that you would need in order to enter a discussion on a forum about a game and be able to participate in that, right?
yes, 100%. Yes, this is like the primer for if you're in line at GameStop, chatting to the disgusting man child in front of you, which is probably me.
Right.
Yeah, and someone brings it's like, to make an analogy, it's if this were a movie podcast,
Hmm.
you might not start with a trip to the moon
Hmm.
or a train coming at the screen.
Right.
but you would probably want to talk about Hitchcock before you talk about Mission Impossible.
Yeah, no, that I get that. That all makes sense to me.
Great. And I will also say I am trying to be pretty, again, well-rounded and unbiased, so to speak, in constructing this. But there is a part of it that I'll get into based on my own personal history with games where there are going to be some, I'm sure other people would make this list differently than I would.
Yeah, I mean,
And
for sure.
obviously.
I think your personal nostalgia is part of it, right? Like you're sharing it with me the same way I shared Animorphs with you.
Now, that said, there's plenty of games, especially in these early segments, that I don't have much familiarity with. So some of these games we're going to be going on a journey together.
Yeah, I guess that was the other thing that I was going to ask is how much do you are you like planning to learn here? Like I guess you are showing me these games, but are you going to like look up new facts and information, or are you going to do you expect to be replaying a lot of stuff that you don't remember very well, or is it are you mostly just going to be, refreshing your memory so that you can get me into it?
I'm not going to do any work at all for
Okay.
this show.
That sounds right. That
No,
makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is one to force me to do something since I never do anything.
No, of course I will be replaying all these games, and obviously the ones I haven't played for the first time. In the early days, it's going to be easier because so many games from the 80s and even from the 90s are games that you don't need to spend that much time with to get a comprehensive view of, but also it'll be different playing them in a new light from a new perspective because I'm going to be thinking about how you're going to be experiencing these for the first time.
Yes.
And also thinking about I know this game is important and influential, and to me, I'm like, of course that game is the game that it is, and everybody knows that. But now I'm also going to be asking, well, if you don't know that, is this game actually fun or interesting to play?
Right,
today?
which is similar to our last podcast where a lot of my opinions on the different books changed when I had to spend a week with each book rather than just breezing through it to the next one, already knowing what was going on, and when I had to formulate things to say to another human being about it. So
Now,
that's probably going to happen here to some degree.
In that sense, this is almost the opposite, where I'm actually slightly concerned about. I don't know. Your perspective on all of this is going to be very interesting because for most people, for people who grew up playing video games regularly, the gap between these games that they played was probably months. Or they play a game and then a year later they go back to it. Especially for our generation, I have no idea what the fuck it's like for little shits today. By the way, we're gonna curse on this podcast. I get used to it.
Whoa. I think we might have to also institute the same rule we did on our last podcast, which is Zoomers get out.
Yeah, no Zoomers.
No Zoomers. Certainly no alphas.
Well,
Fuck
Zoomers
off.
can listen, but we just don't want you. We just don't want to know.
Right? Yeah. Alphas, no.
And no Chads.
That's not what I meant, but yes, that's also true.
What about Sigmas?
I think we're the Sigmas here, right?
Right. Anyway, I feel like I was making a point. Was I?
I don't
remember. I don't remember what I was talking about. Oh yeah, that you're going to be experiencing these games in a very condensed time frame, and especially as we get deeper into it, I'm really curious. When you're playing a new game every week, which I mean, to be fair, a lot of video game players do that now, but it's sort of not the same as like you're experiencing the jump to 3D or the first person shooter or whatever it might be in a condensed time frame. Will you even remember the difference between these games? Will it just be a blur to you at a certain point? I don't know. It's kind of a weird experiment that I feel like maybe no one has ever done.
Whoa. I mean, that will also be the downside of not going purely chronological, is that it'll be harder to keep track of, like, holy shit, this thing's graphics are crazy because look at all the other ones that I'm playing right next to it, if we're doing a little bit of jumping back and forth. But, I think that's a loss we have to be willing to take.
Yeah, it'll keep the show more interesting. And I do think you'll still get some of that perspective. And sometimes I think it's even just as interesting to examine it from the opposite end of saying, oh, well, I've already played this. Now it's seeing where that began can also be just as worthwhile. Like again, to compare it to movies again, most kids don't grow up starting with Chaplin movies, right?
Right.
But at a certain point, yeah, you probably did, you fucking freak. But at a certain, I mean, I did grow up watching Marx Brothers movies. But at a certain point, you go back and revisit those things and you go, oh, wow, Birth of a Nation. Damn, this is good shit,
Right. Yeah, we've all had that experience.
We've all had that.
Be careful, because we're on a video games podcast now and not an Animorphs podcast. You don't want to draw in the wrong audience with your jokes.
I'm just saying that Battleship Potemkin, damn, when that crib is on the stairs and shit, that's wild. All right. We're not here to talk about movies. And if you're alt-right, get the fuck out. We don't want you either. Anyway, we don't need to get into politics.
I thought we were all about that grift. Yeah, I mean, okay. I think I sidetracked us to this something like 15, 20 minutes ago, and because you were about to start on our histories. This is something else you're going to learn if you weren't a fan of our other podcast, is that we probably could have made this an hour long with no topic.
Yeah. Let's just say on this podcast, there might be some tangents.
Crazy.
So anyway, but that's fine. I think it's probably good that we started out with the choice of games for the show, and now I can kind of talk about my history with games and how maybe some of that informed the way that I am laying out the structure of this show.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hear your history.
My history with games. Wow, this is real exciting. So
his story, because you're a man.
I guess I'll just. Right. Obviously, if I were a woman, it would be her story.
Right. You got it.
Or non-binary would be they's story. I never hear they's story, but I like that.
It is really good. You should. What do they call it? Skeet that out.
I'll skeet that later. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have been playing video games most of my life. And I'll say this too, as a way of leaning into this. We're the two of us. We're getting up there in age.
And you don't need to say that.
No, we're not. I mean, you're older than I am, obviously.
That's not. Oh yeah, that is true. I forgot.
That is true. Yes, yeah. You're
right.
A lot older than me.
20 days older than you.
We don't need to split hairs. You're significantly older than I am.
Sure.
That said, when it comes to covering the history of video games, this is one area where I sort of feel more secure in my age. In fact, if anything, I almost wish I were a little older to do this show. Because, so we're millennials. I came of age in the 90s. So all of my early video
age in the 90s.
Sure. What do you want? My childhood was in the 90s. All right.
Yeah, that sounds more accurate.
Whatever, however you want to phrase it.
What age?
I came of 10 different ages in the 90s. You don't know what that phrase means. It could mean anything.
I sure don't know what you mean by that phrase.
Anyway, my point is, video games are a fascinating medium because it is feasible and actual that many people grew up alongside video games. People who are like 10, 15 years older than us have basically been alive and progressed with video games since the beginning of video games as a mainstream product. unlike movies, which are, over 100 years old, um, like people in their 40s and 50s, they watched this medium grow from nothing to a phenomenon. And I think there's something fascinating about that it's one of the rare things. Like, you can't say that about books or music ever. There, right? We are at a point in time right now where there are people who have literally witnessed the entire history of this medium, and and we're close to that. We have witnessed most of it. But part of me is like, oh man, I feel like there's a romanticization of the 80s in particular in the video game hobby. At least there used to be. Maybe there's not now. Everyone's too young. But
Yeah,
when
Ready
I was
Player One came out and ruined it, and now everybody knows the truth.
That's right. But when I was a kid growing up, I'd be watching the angry video game nerd. I'd be like hearing the people that I was listening to or reading talk about video games were people a generation older than me who were nostalgic for the arcades and things like that. So I was like by proxy nostalgic for arcades that I didn't quite experience. But I don't know. I kind of like that I'm at an age where compared to a lot of people, it's like, well, I sort of do have some built-in expertise about this subject. I think that's kind of fun. if you're the same generation as us, there's something interesting about that. Anyway, I believe the first video game that I ever played, to my memory, is Kirby's Dream Land on the original Game Boy. And I believe it was a babysitter that I had as a kid who had a Game Boy. And that's my first memory of playing a video game. And I said, someday I want to be just like Kirby. And now I am.
Now you are.
But it took me a lot of begging of my parents to finally can't remember if I got a Game Boy first or a Super Nintendo. A Super Nintendo was my first console that I owned. And I sort of do feel, like I said, I feel it's silly. Part of me has imposter syndrome because I'm like, it should have been the NES, But the truth is, a lot of those older games I did not experience until later in life that we're going to be talking about in the show. So if you want to call me a fraud, you can do it now.
No, that would have been my expectation. And I don't
Sure.
know why you're getting so self-conscious about it.
I just, when you're doing a show where you purport to be an expert on something, again, it's fine. I know logically and rationally it's fine, but the people that I listen to talk about video games, they're always talking about, oh man, the Atari, my first console. And I'm like, I'm a loser. I suck. But that's why you're here, because compared to you, I'm a god.
Right. That's why this is going to work out. I mean, listen, you're just going to have to deal with it. As you said, your expertise is coming from your age and interest. And since this is only going to appeal to other people of your age and interest, you're not necessarily going to have expertise over our listeners. But that's okay because you position yourself as the expert and that makes them feel like they're experts too. So it all works out and everybody loves it.
And going forward in future episodes, I won't be hemming and hawing like this. I will project confidence to fool the listeners who didn't listen to this episode. Okay. So I was a Nintendo kid growing up. I still am a Nintendo kid. I fought in the console wars. I lost a lot of friends along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I still wake up in the night. If I hear a little bleep or a bloop, I have flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough.
Yeah. I have similar memories of browser wars.
Right. Of course. Yeah. By then I was out of the game. I recall very distinctly seeing at my cousin's house. Does everybody have like a cousin or a friend who's... Oh, let me finish. Okay. Let me finish the sentence. I feel like it's a common thing for people to tell stories about the friend who had the video games. Like, oh yeah, I had the one console, but my friend had both consoles, or the other game that I wasn't allowed to play, you know? Everybody has that
Mhm.
kind of a story of that envy, that lust for products.
Yeah, I mean, like, back in the '90s, probably for sure, where, today's kids are probably all like, gimme, gimme. So everybody's got fucking everything. And, all their games are online,
Pieces of shit.
multiplayer, Minecraft, whatever. So, like, I can't even play with you unless you have it too. But back in the day, it's like, well, if I have a thing, then your friends probably thought the same thing about some of your games. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
Everybody's
I'm
got
sure.
different subsets.
Yeah, I'm sure I was that friend for other people. And it's very different now because there's not as much with the computer and iPads and phones, there's more of a sort of equalization about that kind of thing. But anyway, I distinctly remember seeing Donkey Kong Country for the first time at my cousin's house and just going, what is this? I need this.
Missed an opportunity. You could have said going ape shit, maybe.
I did.
Because they're, yeah,
Yeah. I
apes.
wouldn't say that. I wouldn't
Uh,
say that, but I did,
yeah.
if you want to put it that way. I wouldn't. Um, so I was always Nintendo growing up, Super Nintendo to N64. My and this is part of it. There's going to be I'll say it right now, a big Nintendo influence on the games on this show. But I am trying to put a focus on a lot of other things. We did consider, I think, or at least I thought briefly about, should this just be about Nintendo games? Because I am sort of more specifically passionate about them. But there's many other games that I am passionate about that are not made by them, and I think it's better to have a wider breadth of everything.
And then you wouldn't
Um,
really be making me into a gamer. You'd be making me
no,
into a Nintendo fanboy, right?
right. It's
It's a
more just
different
that
premise.
I feel less imposter syndrome about the since I grew up on those. But anyway, I eventually got a PlayStation 3. That was my first non Nintendo console. I play stuff at friends' houses, but in terms of what I actually had, it was not until high school, I believe, that I had a PS3, and then now, of course, I transitioned to I'm playing PC games, PlayStation. I've gone back and played the older Sega, all that stuff. I Nowadays it's very easy with a lot of games have been ported to Steam. There's retro consoles and things like that. So there was a period in high school and college where I went back and re-explored those things. But that's I guess my general, for people to know my roots. Definitely a Nintendo guy. In terms of the kinds of games that I like, I guess I would say I also consider myself kind of an omnivore of video games. I do tend to play a little bit of everything. There are some blind spots that I have. I would say fighting games, I mean sports games, which we will be covering a few. Um Also any kind of competitive, like stuff like League of Legends or things like that, or specifically multiplayer focused, tend not to be my area of interest. I definitely gravitate more towards single player or local multiplayer types of games. I like adventure games, action games, narrative games. But I like a lot of genres, and I try to kind of play everything. But there will certainly be some areas where I'm lacking in that. It will not be too far into the podcast before some of those are revealed. And today, right now, I also do. I am a writer for the website GoNintendo.com, which is a fan run new Nintendo news blog, and also has reviews and previews and stuff like that. That's been going for a long time. People, there's a decent chance if you're listening to this, you'd know about this site. It's like I used to read it when I was in high school and beyond, and so I can say, and I think I will say going forward, that I am a video games journalist.
Whoa. That's
I
like a
mean,
big deal, right?
you can't say that I'm
Like
not.
the
I have gone to events. I have written up reports. I'm a games journalist.
Would you say that this podcast has anything to do with ethics in your profession?
I would say that that will probably come up. Yes.
Okay. Just to get things clear, because to be honest, I was kind of tuning out for a bit. I
Sure, I
wasn't
get
really
that. It
listening to
was
you, but then
boring.
you said journalist, video game journalist, and I
Mhm.
recognized a meme that I've heard, and
Uh-huh.
brain snapped
Yeah.
back at attention.
Right. Well, that's I like pepper those in every now and then to get your attention.
Right.
And I've also designed one or two rudimentary text adventures, so I'm also going to refer to myself as a game designer.
Game or oh yeah, designer. I was thinking, are you a developer? What's the difference
I
between
could
a
say
designer and
developer.
developer? Yeah.
There's
What
not
sounds
I
more professional?
yeah, they both sound pretty good. I'm going to say from now on I will say that I am a game designer and games journalist. And
Okay.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
elaborate, and I'll just let future listeners go, "Oh, he must be a big deal."
Yeah, this is one of those secrets that you alluded to at the beginning of this episode.
And I also think we could have brought this up top, but many other places on the internet I go by the name Quentz. That's basically my gamer tag. And I don't know. I feel like this is a gamer show. Maybe I should go by Quentz on this show.
Holy shit. That
And
would
your
be
gamer
kind of
tag, of
crazy.
course, would be Dog Times.
Yeah, sure. I guess that's my gamer tag.
I don't know. We'll have to see how we feel about that. So that's a brief rundown of my history. But I am honestly, personally, more interested in learning about your history and why it doesn't exist. What? Because I know you
Yeah.
have. I know there are games that you've
Yeah.
played.
No, like there is a history. It's not like there isn't a history of video games with me. Like I think that's pretty inescapable, especially if you're a loser male nerd in your
Hmm.
30s. Like you
Hmm.
have to have some kind of, I don't know, some kind of history, but it's never. I would not consider myself a gamer, and I would not consider myself good at video games at all. So maybe that's what you'll be teaching me.
Yeah, and yet, as you'll explain, but I think many people would consider you a gamer.
Interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe they would. Maybe they would. Maybe the whole show is a lie.
Let's hang it up right now. Anyway, so my name is Jake, chapter 1.
All right. So I mean, let's see. I didn't plan out a nice little monologue like you had there.
I didn't plan it
I
out.
was
That
I
was
was
off
pretty
the
impressed.
cuff.
Well, I was pretty impressed by it either way.
Thanks.
So let's see. As far as a first video game memory, I don't necessarily know that I have one of those. I'm certain I played some forms of like computer games in like elementary school or something like this. Maybe even a little bit younger, but I don't have distinct memories of these. I suspect that maybe one or two of these are gonna pop up. Um, I know as a minor spoiler, Chip's Challenge showed up on the list, and I was like, I've definitely played that. I have no memory of
Mm.
when or where, but I'm sure I have played it.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
probably should have mentioned. I forgot about even like, yeah, I used to play like Windows 3.1,
right.
those kinds of games too. Yeah, before even getting a console. Yeah.
Right. So I'm certain that there was something like that happened. But the first video game and one of the only video games that I started playing majorly was Pokemon Red at some point in elementary school on I had a Game Boy Color. I did not have an actual Game Boy, and that Game Boy Color was used exclusively to play Pokemon Red and eventually Pokemon Silver. And that's it. Those are the only games I had for it.
Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Crystal.
Nope, never owned those.
Hmm.
Unless I had yellow. I definitely never had crystal. Don't think I ever had yellow.
All
But I
right.
have played it going forward. Um, Now, the Pokemon franchise is one that I have played a lot and I am very familiar with. I played, as a child, a lot of Gen 1 and Gen 2. I skipped Gen 3 because I started getting into those middle school years where I was like, oh, I think I'm done with Pokemon. At some point in high school, I got back into it right around the release of Diamond and Pearl. I got got super into it. A bunch of my friends were into it. I got into the competitive community. I battled on Shoddy Battle Simulator. Uh, so if this is getting really into the weeds, if you know anything about Pokemon competitive history, you're gonna be like, oh, that's old as shit. I kind of fell off competitive battling before the simulator moved to Showdown. But I do still follow that, and I do still regularly play all of the Pokemon games. Now, outside of Pokemon in particular, um, when I was very young, I want to say elementary school into middle school, I did actually have an N64.
Wow.
Um,
This is huge.
the only games I remember having for this are racing games. I had Cruisin' USA, Cruisin' the World, and Extreme G. I don't recall playing any games on this that are not racing games, unless
You
I
didn't
was at
have
somebody
Pokemon
else's house.
Stadium?
I played Pokemon Stadium at other kids' houses. I did not own it.
Why did you have this thing? Who got it for you?
I'm not sure, but it probably had to do with my dad, who is also a weirdo nerd, and I do know that he was regularly playing computer games at this point, and was probably the kind of old nerd who played that kind of shit. But I don't know much about that. Like, I know he got
Okay.
really big into like Myst when it came out, for example. But
Yeah.
I
Can't
don't
wait
know
to get to
anything about
Mist.
that.
Oh man, that's gonna be
Um,
huge.
so I played a bunch of those racing games on the N64. Never played any racing games post that. Obviously, people have forced me to play Mario Kart or whatever, but other than the few, maybe a dozen times total, and I'm not good at it. I haven't done anything with that going forward. Um, because I am the kind of loser nerd that I am, most, if not all, of my friends have been very much so into video games. Because of this, I am relatively aware of like the names of different games and kind of what they are in a sense, the general culture surrounding it. However, most of these games I have not actually played. These are the sorts of things that I would just sit around and chat while other people played for the most part. Um, it also means that sometimes my game knowledge is odd, because there will be a very popular game that my friends never played, and so I'll be like, I think I've heard of that. And then there will be some game like, say, Cubivore, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I really remember that because all my friends were super into that back in high school, and nobody fucking knows what this is, and whatever. So that's going to come up, I think, on the podcast as we go through. That I'm going to have different reactions to different things. Um, my high school friends, in terms of video games, were much more Xbox kids. Um,
Mm.
so that's going to influence the kinds of games that I was aware of or saw. Um, that being said, one thing about me, I technically can play first person shooters. The game that taught me to do it was Portal, because I decided at one point I should play Portal. And up
So you could
until
get the
this
memes.
so I could get the memes, exactly. This is the game because it requires very little reaction time, and you can take as much time as you want to do anything, and it's just a puzzle thing that taught me how to literally control a first person shooter when I was, I don't know, 17 or 18. At like 15 or 16 years old, if you put me in a first person shooter and asked me to walk like 20 feet, I would end up looking straight up in the air and could not figure out how to look down. This is the level of video gaming that I was at. I'm a little better than that now. However, I've never really progressed past that point with regards to platformers. So I do suspect that, especially with some of these early games, right off the bat, I'm going to have a lot of problems with very simple things, which will be fun, hopefully, for all of us.
Now, a big, well, I don't know. Should I interrupt you
Yeah,
or
go
do
ahead.
you want to
Yeah,
keep?
please interrupt me.
because I have multiple points I want to bring up, but on that one, I feel like a big um, what's the word I'm looking for? Problem
Mhm.
for a lot of people who aren't gamers, in my experience, the thing that they run up against that holds them back is controlling a camera while moving. Basically using two sticks at the same time. That I think is something that if you've been playing games your whole life, you've acclimated to over time. And newcomers struggle with that. But I think for you struggle even without a camera, a 2D
Yeah,
platformer, you still have issues.
yes. So the camera thing is actually like the biggest part of what Portal taught me to do. So I don't
Hmm,
think I will have as much trouble with that sort of thing. Um
interesting.
the problems that I have are a lot more having any sense of like distance, especially three-dimensional distance in the game, and any sense of like how much I move. So it's hard for me to kind of keep track of my position and what I need to do.
Right. I get that.
Yeah. So we're gonna see how all of that turns out. I mean, most of this is stream of consciousness rather than a full narrative for me. So if
Sure.
you have more interruptions, feel free to bring them
Sure.
in.
Well, it is hearing you talk about your friends who were into video games. That is one of the
Hmm.
things that I was curious about
Yeah.
because it's so hard for me to imagine just because basically my entire life. I mean, now I can also say this, I'm heavily into board games, not as much as I once was because I used to host a YouTube channel about board games. But gaming of some kind has been part of my life for my whole life. And up until and even while I'm into board games still, it's hard for me to think of truly a single time as a child, a teenager, or an adult that I would get together with friends when we weren't either, even if we were seeing a movie or watching a movie at home, 99% of the time, before or after, video games were part of the equation. The reason I got together with my friends was so we could play video games together. Like that just was the centerpiece of what we were doing all the time. Maybe we were going to the mall, probably stop at GameStop and buy a video game and then go home and play it. Like that's just what it always was. So I know this is a very stupid question, but I do have this question in my mind
Mhm.
of like, what what were you doing? What did you do? Did you really just sit there and just watch them play, or were there a lot of times where you were doing other stuff? I know you were into like rock climbing and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a totally different friend group. That was my non-loser, non-nerd friend group. I
Yeah.
had my like my athletic friend group, and then I had my loser nerd friend group.
And they're probably looking at me like, how did you not rock climb?
Right.
What
Yeah.
else is there
Except
to do?
now let's be clear. Rock climbers, especially rock climbers before it got popular, were not like cool jocks. These were the loser, druggy, like burnout kids, and not but they weren't the loser nerd kids.
Good, good.
Just so
Good
there's
to make sure.
nobody's thinking that at any point was I ever cool.
We don't want to think that, no.
Yeah, no, I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression here. Um, so yeah, a larger part of the time than you might suspect, or maybe not. Yes, legitimately, I am sitting there and I am hanging out while other people are playing video games. And what I am doing is watching them, but also just making conversation about random topics. I'm, talking to people. Uh, but while talking, you know, someone else might be playing video games, or maybe I'm talking about what's happening on that. Now, we also might be going for walks around the neighborhood. This was a common thing. We would like bunch up and go out to the park or whatever. We might be watching a TV
Hoodlums.
show. Um, we did some like Dungeons and Dragons-esque role-playing game things,
Nerd.
a lot of that sort of thing. But yes, a decent amount of time, that is what I was doing.
All right.
It's just that. It's just sitting there watching.
You're a freak. You're a weird freak.
You're
what?
a good, yeah, yeah.
What you are is every man's dream. Every man wants a girlfriend to sit there and watch them play video games.
So, very funny story about that. So one time, in high school, my one of my friends' parents had like a beach house, and so for I don't know if it was a week or however long, me and a bunch of my friends went out to this beach house, and I brought my then girlfriend with me, who had met some of these people but didn't really know them that well. And a common thing that would happen would be that a group of people would sit down, which would include three of my friends and my girlfriend, all playing video games. And I would sit there next to her, like, wow, babe, you're so good at video games.
I love it. It's because you're a
Yeah.
feminist.
That's right. That's
You
the
support
reason.
women in STEM.
Exactly.
And that's one of the main platforms of this show.
Women in STEM. STEM is video games, right?
Yeah, that's the E, I think.
Sure. Electronic games.
Yeah, right. I love that for you. That's beautiful. Now, we welcome people of all backgrounds, genders, and cultures here, but not the French or the British.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hold on.
Now, you did sell yourself short a little bit, because I mean, I don't know, maybe you would ramble around to this at some point, but I know I can think of a couple other games that you have had fixations upon.
Yes, so there's two other things that I would need to bring up. So also in high school, I got very into DDR, the Dance Dance Revolution, and
Oh, yeah.
in case people thought I was talking about, some old German government.
Dick
Um,
revolutions. I'm setting the bar low for the show so people know what to expect.
Yeah, I'm trying to make a semi-cultured joke, and you're just dicks.
I didn't get yours, so I thought mine
Yeah.
was funnier.
Yours is funnier.
Yeah, right.
Listen, I was a fit, athletic kid, so I did the dancing game where you moved.
Sucks.
Yeah, you gotta get work a sweat up on that. So I played a lot of that. And I played some Guitar Hero and Rock Band as well, but I never owned any of those. I actually also, here's another game system I owned, is I owned a PS2 exclusively to play Dance Dance Revolution games on. Those are the only games I owned for it. But I owned like 4 of them.
It's just
5
insane.
of them.
I mean, this is like the people, like, it's like having a DVD player and like you just only watch, I don't know, Medea movies. Like, I don't know what just like you never branch out. You're just
That's
like,
me.
this is it. Oh, you have a kitchen? Yeah, there's just ramen. Have you ever tried, I don't know, burgers? Nah. Ramen's good enough for me. That's all I like.
I mean, now you're speaking my language over there.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so there was that, and I did eventually move from that into playing with my fingers, different 4-key
Okay.
rhythm games. But I haven't
Putting
done
your
that in
finger
a
to
while, and I'm very out of practice, and I would be pretty bad if I tried it now.
Okay. And then
And
there's one other big one.
yeah, and then
Okay.
the other big one is that I have played a decent amount of Minecraft. Now that is relatively recent in my development. Like all of these other things, I'm saying, yeah, back in high school, I used to do this, 15 plus goddamn years ago. Um, Minecraft is something that I started playing. When did I first play it? I want to say around the start of the pandemic is when I first played
Oh.
it.
Hmm.
So at this point, that's what, 5
About
years ago?
1 or 2 years ago, I think.
Yes.
Just happened.
And I have been relatively on and off about that. Like, I think the last time I actually played any Minecraft was probably like 8+ months ago. But I have sunk a decent number of hours into that.
I don't know if I realized it was that recent because yeah, I was there from the beginning, baby. I fell out. I got bored of Minecraft before you started playing Minecraft.
Yeah, no, that is true. I believe that that is in fact true.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, we can eventually we'll get to the Minecraft episode, I suppose, but that's it. What you have played as Minecraft, and we have played a little bit together, but your version of Minecraft is basically a different game than what I
Yes.
played.
Yeah, like almost entirely based on how early you dropped out of it. But
Yeah, it's wild.
But yeah, like fundamentally, the games I've played some Minecraft. I've played rhythm games, particularly DDR. I've played Pokemon games. Uh, I've played Minesweeper, if that counts. I play
Sure.
that
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
phone regularly.
Yeah.
Does that count?
And it's
That's about it.
it's an interesting selection because I would say all three of those are games that kind of have an entire community to themselves and attract a lot of these sort of like real special interest type people who the people who play those games tend to be, many of them are like, those are the games I play and obsess over, and they don't branch out. So it makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense that those are the ones you've played.
Yeah, and I have popped into other games. There's probably going to be other games that come up, and I'm going to say, "Oh yeah, I played a decent amount of this back like,
Sure.
20 years ago," and I just kind of, it doesn't impact me anymore.
But
But
you
those are the ones
never
that I'm just like, yeah. I mean, well, I guess I don't even know about Minecraft. It's just that I vaguely currently play it.
there was never a draw for you. You never it just never I don't you were just too busy reading or some shit, you nerd.
That's right, reading, moving my body, that kind
Ugh.
of stuff.
I can hardly fathom it.
Yeah, well, this is perfect because now I'm old and fat and I don't do any exercise anymore and I don't move my body. So this is the perfect time to get into video games.
Yep. And who better to do it than your older and fatter friend? No, we already established I'm much younger than you.
Right.
So yeah, it's gonna be exciting. And for me also on a personal level, like it was for you with Animorphs, just entertaining for me to get the chance to talk about games,
Mhm.
many of them that I love, and just talk about them for a while, which I don't always get to do. That's exciting.
Yeah, and I have to listen.
You
I
have
have
to
no
listen.
choice.
You
You say
have to participate.
go on for hours and there's nothing I can do. Same with the listeners. If
Oh
you've
yeah.
listened this far on
You're
episode
you're fucked
0,
already.
yeah, you don't even have to listen to this episode and you're already fucking an hour in. Yeah, no, you're screwed. You're stuck. You're not getting
You're
out.
done. You're done. Now, you currently do own a Nintendo Switch? Do you own any games that aren't Pokemon or Minecraft for it?
Um, I believe I actually technically own like Mario Odyssey because it like came in a bundle with like a
Hmm.
used thing as like part of a special deal or something when I got it.
Hmm.
But I've never played it.
Okay.
Um, I
All right.
did, I think, buy Subnautica and I started playing it, but then I forgot about it.
Oh yeah. Cool. All right. Good to know.
So
I
not
mean,
really.
that's good. We've covered a lot of that then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I could try to lay out some of my favorite games, but maybe it'll be more fun to wait until we come across them over the
Yeah.
course of the
Yeah,
show.
because you're not going to be able to list all of your favorites. I can list all of my
No.
favorites.
I do have sort of a top 4 or 5 that I tend to think of as my favorites, but people can probably guess them. You know, if I had to say,
Mario,
yeah,
Donkey
Mario,
Kong,
right?
Zelda.
Mario and
Just name all the
Zelda.
Nintendo properties I can think of.
I don't know about.
Kirby.
I mean, those are all great, but Mario, Zelda, and Metroid are kind of my like the holy trinity for me. Of just those are the games that when a new one comes out, that's the most excited I'll ever be in my life. Is for one of those. And I also tend to really love adventure games, particularly like point and click adventure games, I think this show will probably have a heavier look at LucasArts and Sierra point and click games than other versions of this show might have because of that.
Sure.
But that's what I love.
You know what? I think we should encourage people. I don't know that we have any
Yeah,
contact method now,
we
but
do.
for sure, people should feel free when we figure out our contact point, and we'll put it in the first actual episode to write in and say, "Hey, what about this game?" And maybe it'll show up on the schedule. Who knows?
Yeah, I'll say it
Unless we
right
hate
now.
you.
We have Bad with Games podcast at gmail.com.
Oh shit! You're already on that.
I'm on that.
Hell yeah.
Bad with Games was taken. So it's Bad with Games podcast. That's fine. We'll put it in the description as well. Yes, I mean, as I said, we have over 700 games. However, I mean, I would like to hear anyone's recommendations, even if you think it's probably already on the list, if you'd have like thoughts about it or something.
Yeah,
That
and maybe
makes
we
it
move it
special.
up, right? Maybe we didn't plan it for
Maybe.
for another year or two if there's
Maybe.
700 goddamn games.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
But also, I'm sure there's some things that fell through the cracks. Maybe that, like I said, fighting games. I don't have too deep familiarity with JRPGs. I'm sure there are genres people might know. Oh, this game a lot of people don't know, but it actually has this thing that revolutionized how this works, and you should definitely try this or something like that. Definitely email us with those suggestions. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of games out there. There's at least 700.
Yeah. Well, I ain't played 700.
But we definitely want to hear your thoughts about that. And I will also be reaching out, I think, more specifically as the show goes on periodically, because there's some series that I'm not as familiar with where I don't really know how important it is. Like, do we need to play them all? Do we just play the second one first? Should we play all of them to to understand the full history of this series? Some series I'll go, oh, the third one is the real one where that matters. And some of them I'm like, nah, I think it's more interesting if we talk about the early one that's maybe not as good, but it'll be fun to discuss. But for series that I'm not as familiar with, I may be asking for help on that too for people. And we have not launched anything yet and won't. I don't for a while probably. But for the sake of having it in here, we do have patreon.com/badwithgames registered.
Holy shit.
So if and
It's on
when
the
at some
agenda.
point, yes, if people at some point, if we get enough people interested, the plan probably is to do a Patreon with more episodes and things like that. So just so you know, if you're listening to this in the future, and if you are ready right now, if you hate money and you want to throw it away immediately, give that link a check. Otherwise, I don't know. Have we I think we've covered the groundwork here for what we need to do for this intro. We should call this episode something gamey, like stage select. Or,
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Stage
demo
select.
mode.
Not like
this is the
main
demo
menu or whatever. Whoa.
Right?
The demo. I kind of like
demos?
stage select.
I don't think I'm going to use either.
Stage select.
Also, I guess the idea is we're going to do 24 games. Why? I don't know. Why did it work out that way? It just did. Or I don't know. Some amount of games, and then there will be sort of a season look back episode of some kind, a milestone episode. But as I said, I am sort of arranging this into semesters, if you want to call them that.
Shouldn't it be, if it's a weekly podcast, shouldn't it be 26 per set? Because then 2 sets is a year.
No.
Okay.
You know why?
Why?
Because you have the recap episode as well. So that's 2 additional episodes, so that each year is roughly 2 seasons. Do you see?
the recap episode and aren't these both recap episodes? Wait,
Yeah,
I
there's
don't
two.
understand the difference between these two episodes you're
One
postulating. We don't have to do this
season.
on this on the air.
One season consists of 24 games plus the final exam episode. So a
Right.
full season is 50 episodes, but that also means it gives us room to maybe take a week off or something. But so like I said, roughly a year is 2 seasons. I just think it's nicer to have I don't want to bump up to 26 because then you're beyond a year. And I don't want to bump to 25 because 24 is a nice even number. And I like that. It's 25 total, 24 games. I just think it's a good look. Could we change it? Maybe.
I mean, I just don't understand because, like, is it more than a year to do 26? Like 52 weeks in a year, right?
All right. But you're forgetting the 2 milestone episodes at the end of each season. So it's 50 episodes total. So you want a season to be 25 games?
Yeah, 25 games and then 1 milestone for 26 total episodes. I don't know, whatever, who cares?
All right.
Then we can fuck off and not do an episode once a season. We can have a sick day.
I mean, we could do 25 because that's like a quarter and it's like putting a quarter into an arcade machine. So that's kind of fun.
I mean, that also does leave open room for holiday specials, whatever. I don't really care. You know what? Do whatever. You're the professor. I'll let you do your. I won't criticize.
Listeners can let us know if you think there should be 24 or 25 games in our arbitrary seasons that mean nothing.
Get ready for more me criticizing than us getting mad at each other over stupid trivial bullshit.
Tough arranging it because like I said, I do want to make sure. Like season 1, I'm like, I'm coming up with the first 24 games. I'm treating this as if you had never played a video game in your life, even though you have. That's how I'm approaching this. So it's like, man, trying to think of what are the most important games that you must play first. It's sort of a daunting task.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
I'm a listener. I'm listening along to the podcast.
Right.
Should I be playing these games in preparation for the episode?
You know what we should have said? Well, we'll say this in our next episode too. But first of all, this show is going to be available as a podcast audio format on any podcast service, including a YouTube, but also on YouTube, there will also be a video version of the show. This episode, I don't know if this one will have a video episode. Maybe I'll just play some Animorphs and use that. I don't know. Maybe it will only be available as a podcast. I don't know. But for our episodes proper, you'll be able to see not us, because you don't want to see us, trust me. No. You look at the thumbnail, you'll understand why.
Jesus.
It's horrifying. But you'll be able to see footage of our actual gameplay footage of the games. As we discuss them. We won't be playing as we discuss, but it'll be there edited in after the fact. So if you haven't played the game and you're not familiar with it, you will be able to follow along and see what we're talking about. Of course, it would be cool if you wanted to play the game each week in preparation with us, because then you'd have more of an understanding of what we're talking about too. But, not required. We also have, by the way, I don't know what our plans are to do anything like this, but I did also get us twitch.tv/badwithgames podcast.
Oh my God.
You gotta, this is what you gotta do when you're starting an endeavor, because you don't want impersonators.
Right. Yeah. No, you don't want anyone sniping that.
If there's ever going to be streaming in our future at any point, if that's something people would be interested in seeing, that might be something we do on Patreon. Like I said, we also want to hear your feedback of what kind of things you want us to do. But I was also going to say, what we were talking about.
I kind of stopped listening to you, so I don't really know where you went after you hopefully answered my question.
We were talking about possible emailing us. Twitch, making suggestions. There's what happened in
Oh,
between.
I think you were gonna talk about how there might be a component of this podcast. I think you were
Right. Oh,
starting to get
yeah.
toward that.
Yeah. Well, there will be. It'll be youtube.com/@badwithgames. Just search, or it'll be a link in the description. You'll find it, Bad with Games on YouTube. So you'll be able to check that out. Again, we're kind of playing with the format of all that, so you'll see that evolve. You can give us feedback on it if you'd like. And I don't know, maybe we'll do it'd be kind of fun to do a Discord or something where people could talk about these games.
Shit.
Like a
Oh, you didn't want to do it with Discord when it was the Animorphs fans. You're like, I don't want any of these fucking losers talking to me. But now that it's video game fans, now you want them to come in.
I don't
I
remember
see how it
saying
is.
that. I don't remember vetoing
I don't know if that was
Discord.
your. I don't know if I can repeat your exact words, but it was something to that effect.
I don't know. I'm not setting it up now. And it would probably be, again, a future, maybe a Patreon thing. But if we're saying, oh, people play along the games, and obviously we'll be wanting emails each week. We want to hear people's thoughts about the game, stuff like that. There'll be plenty of ways for you, the listeners, to get involved and feel like you're a part of the show. And if you are someone who's followed us over from the Yerky Boys, which did we even say the name of our Animorphs podcast?
Probably did. I don't know. Who fucking cares?
Then God bless you and welcome in, as
It's
they say in the
called the
Midwest.
Yerky Boys. Here's another. If you didn't listen to that thing, you should know. This is big for our credentials. We posted that show weekly, basically every week. We skipped maybe like one or two. Had to put some filler episodes in when we did a vacation. But for the most part, we did that show every week for over 2 years, right? And we didn't fall off. We didn't stop. And you can expect the same diligence with this show. Like, you're not going to see us fuck around with this, right? You're going to get episodes
Damn
of this
right.
every week until we decide that, oh, we hate it and we're not doing it anymore.
That's right. Now, I don't know. It is going to become more challenging as we get deeper into the show. We may have to space things out differently or come up with interstitial episodes. I don't know for sure, only because some of these games, it's just not feasible for us to play through the entire game necessarily.
Yeah.
Some of them, it might be like, oh, you played it for a few hours, and for some games, that's fine. It's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, and hopefully as we get more experience, we'll have a better idea of do you need to finish this? Do we need multiple episodes? How far do you need to get? Whatever. We'll figure it out.
It's exciting. Are you excited about this journey? Are you dreading having to play a video game every week for the rest of your life?
I'm a little bit nervous about having to play a video game every week for the rest of my life. It doesn't necessarily sound pleasant, but it is nice to be back here recording with you. It felt good to take a break and not have to hear your stupid voice for a while. But this feels familiar. This feels right. I should be here doing this, so I'm feeling comfortable getting back into my groove. And if I have to play a video game to do that, then I guess that's what I have to do.
Certainly, one thing that's good about this is there's going to be a lot more variety. Much as we love Animorphs, every week was Animorphs. If you were a little tired of Animorphs, too bad. It's more Animorphs is coming at you.
Animorphs.
I mean, sure, of course. But here, if you're not feeling one week's game, that's fine. Next week you got a brand new one. And again, I am pre-selecting. Most of these, I'm sure there's a few stinkers in there, but most of these are ostensibly the greatest games ever made. So you're getting the Criterion collection of games presented to you. It should be a smooth ride. We'll find out.
So if I don't like them,
you're the one who's wrong.
Probably bad.
Yeah. All right. Look forward to it. Folks, and again, that's on our channel right now.
Yeah. What's our first game gonna be?
Well, there's no other way to start it off. This week, available now on our wherever you're listening to or viewing this show, this program. You are going to get to hear me explain and us discuss the legendary Super Mario Brothers for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Wow.
You can't get more classic than that.
What a
Peace.
classic.
And now, as we always say, gamers out.